Are you Robin Hood? Taking from the rich and giving to the poor?
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe in giving to the poor.
But you're giving knowledge to the poor.
Yes. That's a very big difference. You see, people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is just creates more poor people.
Give a man a fish, he fishes for the day, or eats for the day.
Yeah, you give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, But you teach them to fish.
But you are the Robin Hood of knowledge, because I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robin?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Keep them poor.
How does a 9-year-old kid in Hawaii, a poor kid, get to this point?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't poor by most people's standards, but I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Because rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. So I was in Hawaii, I was 9 years old. My father was the head of education, PhD, very smart man, good guy. And for some reason, we moved across town and I went to a school with rich kids. So this is a little town called Hilo, Hawaii. That's not on the map anywhere, but it is. It's a sugar plantation town. So when I was 9 years old, I moved to this rich kid's school. And suddenly I realized I was poor because it's relative, as Einstein, it's all relative. And my classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my fourth grade teacher, and I said, when am I going to learn about money? And she was this woman who should have retired 50 years earlier. She was so sick and tired of kids by this time. She says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, what am I, in Sunday school? And I was this punky little 9-year-old kid. And she says, we don't teach money at school. I said, why not? And she couldn't answer me. And she got very flustered. She said, sit down, take your seat. And then I got curious. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. So my father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. And I went, no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, But he says, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So why ask him? He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free. I'd pick up cigarette butts, and he had hotels and restaurants, and I would clean and do menial tasks. And as I got older, I started getting into office work and marketing and accounting, and I was an apprentice basically, but I always worked for free. And he would teach me about money, but the way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And finally one day I got upset. I said, well, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, no. What do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? So I don't know. I'm teaching you about money. There's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them, but one of the best ones is found in the game of Monopoly. It still is today. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. Well, is that all there is? He goes, that's it. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Just like the game of Monopoly. And then Rich Dad Poor Dad came in 97. And the story goes, every publisher turned me down. They said, you don't know what you're talking about. Because they said savers were losers, your house is not an asset, and the rich don't work for money. And so the publishers are like my dad, academic superstars, they're A students in school. And so they turned the book down. And it took going by self-published route. A lot of network marketing companies picked up the book, like Amway and those guys. And they picked up the book to help recruit because it's about financial independence. They're about the same thing I am. And then Oprah called in 2000. And then the next time I'm on Oprah, and I went from obscurity to world famous, overnight success in 2000. And the book has been on the New York Times bestsellers for 7 years until the New York Times took it off. They said it had been on too long. But as you know, most people in publishing or journalism, they're on the other side of the coin of capitalism. So they don't like guys who make money. And that's like my poor dad's side. So that's kind of the story. And I play Monopoly in real life. I don't need a job. I don't have a retirement. Don't need a retirement. I don't want the government to take care of me. But I felt a social responsibility to teach. My success comes from spirituality, not finance. And what happened was when my wife and I started Rich Dad back in 1996, actually, we left the spirituality out. And then the corporate types came in, the MBAs and the accountants and attorneys, and they tried to make it into a business. And I said, no, we're just a bunch of merry men who are kind of like Robin Hood and his gang.
Are you Robin Hood? Taking from the rich and giving to the poor?
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe in giving to the poor.
But you're giving knowledge to the poor.
Yes. That's a very big difference. You see, people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is it just creates more poor people.
Give a man a fish, he fishes for the day, or eats for the day.
Yeah, you give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, but you teach them to fish.
But you are the Robin Hood of knowledge, because I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robin?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. But, unfortunately, the poor, as was in the Bible, I'm not real religious, the poor will always be amongst us, because it starts up here.
Right, it's that fear mentality.
It's in their words, and the words become flesh. Again, I'm not really religious. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But when they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they go down. They become what they say. Because it's an escape. It's an escape. You know what I mean? It's easy to say I can't afford it. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I can't go to the gym. When you could go to the gym, but no, I can't. Truth is, I'm just too lazy to go to the gym.
Right. And your rich dad used to say what instead of I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? What would it take, or why should I do that? He says that a question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say I can't afford it, your mind shuts down, and you become what you say.